Behind Hollywood's golden facade of glamour and stardom, a darker truth lurked in the shadows. 7 decades have passed, yet the circumstances surrounding some of the most shocking deaths in entertainment history remain shrouded in mystery, cover-ups, and unanswered questions. Were these tragic accidents, calculated murders, or something far more sinister? The official reports tell one story, but declassified documents and witness testimonies suggest the truth died with these stars, and someone wanted it that way. Thelma Todd. Thelma Todd's lifeless body was discovered on December 16, 1935, slumped over the steering wheel of her chocolate-brown Lincoln Phaeton, carbon monoxide filling her lungs in a garage 17 miles from her last known location. The official verdict was suicide, but the evidence told a far more disturbing story that authorities seemed determined to ignore. The night before her death, Todd attended a party at the Trocadero nightclub, where witnesses reported seeing her in heated arguments with both her business partner, Roland West, and her alleged lover, mob boss, Lucky Luciano. Restaurant receipts show she left the club at 2:30 a.m., yet her body wasn't discovered until nearly 24 hours later. The timeline made no sense, and neither did the physical evidence. Coroner's reports, buried for decades, revealed Todd's dress was torn, her high-heeled shoes were missing, and her face bore unexplained bruises that suggested a violent struggle. Most damning was the discovery of blood in her car that didn't match the carbon monoxide poisoning scenario. Detective files document witness testimony claiming Todd had been receiving death threats from organized crime figures, demanding she allow her restaurant to be used for illegal gambling operations, threats she had repeatedly refused. Little did Hollywood know that the LAPD had been investigating connections between Todd's Sidewalk Cafe and a money laundering operation run by the Luciano crime family. Internal police memos, discovered in 1987, show detectives were ordered to halt their investigation by officials whose own financial ties to organized crime figures would later surface during federal corruption probes. Records later proved that the garage where Todd's body was found belonged to jeweler Arthur Prince, who had been under FBI surveillance for fencing stolen goods. Prince's statement claiming he hadn't seen Todd's car until that morning was contradicted by a neighbor who reported seeing unusual activity at the garage throughout the previous day. The neighbor's testimony mysteriously disappeared from official files, and he relocated to another state within weeks of Todd's death, refusing to speak about the incident for the remainder of his life. Jean Harlo's death at age 26 sent shockwaves through Hollywood, officially attributed to kidney failure, but hospital records and witness accounts suggest a far more complex and potentially sinister reality involving medical negligence, religious fanaticism, and possible deliberate poisoning that powerful figures worked desperately to conceal. The platinum blonde bombshell collapsed on the set of Saratoga in May 1937, complaining of severe abdominal pain and exhaustion. Studio physician Dr. Harold Carney initially diagnosed food poisoning, but Harlo's condition rapidly deteriorated in ways inconsistent with standard kidney disease progression. Most troubling was her mother-in-law's refusal to allow proper medical treatment, insisting that Christian Science prayer would cure the actress. Hospital records obtained through legal discovery decades later revealed Harlo's urine contained traces of mercury and other heavy metals at levels suggesting deliberate poisoning rather than environmental exposure. Dr. Leland Chapman, the physician who performed the autopsy, noted in private correspondence that he had been pressured by MGM executives to avoid mentioning these findings in his official report. Chapman's personal notes, discovered after his death, explicitly stated his belief that Harlo had been systematically poisoned over several months. The most disturbing evidence emerged from Harlo's personal secretary, who provided a sworn statement claiming the actress had been receiving unmarked packages containing what appeared to be vitamin supplements from an unknown source. These packages arrived weekly for 3 months before Harlo's death, always accompanied by notes encouraging her to maintain her health and beauty regimen. Laboratory analysis of remaining pills found in Harlo's home revealed they contained mercury compounds used in industrial processes. Little did Hollywood know that MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer had taken out a $1.5 million insurance policy on Harlo just 6 months before her death, with the studio as the primary beneficiary. Internal studio memos show executives discussing Harlo's increasing salary demands and her threats to break her contract unless given more creative control, threats that would have cost the studio millions in lost revenue from her upcoming films. Records later proved that the Christian Science practitioner who convinced Harlo's mother-in-law to refuse medical treatment had previously been involved in similar cases where wealthy patients died under suspicious circumstances. Federal investigators later connected this practitioner to a network of individuals who specialized in providing religious justifications for avoiding medical care while secretly administering harmful substances. The practitioner fled to Mexico immediately after Harlo's death and was never questioned by authorities. Thomas Ince. Thomas Ince, the pioneering filmmaker who helped create the modern movie industry, died under circumstances so suspicious that his death became Hollywood's first major cover-up, involving newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst, actress Marion Davies, and a yacht party that ended with a bullet wound officially attributed to heart failure. On November 19, 1924, Ince joined an exclusive party aboard Hearst's luxurious yacht, Oneida, to celebrate his 44th birthday. Other guests included Charlie Chaplin, Marion Davies, columnist Luella Parsons, and several other Hollywood elite. According to official accounts, Ince suddenly fell ill with acute indigestion and was rushed to shore for medical treatment. He died at his home 2 days later, with his death certificate listing heart failure as the cause. The truth began unraveling when San Diego District Attorney Chester Kempley announced plans to investigate the death as a possible murder case. Witnesses on neighboring boats reported hearing gunshots from the Hearst yacht on the night of Ince's illness, while crew members later claimed they saw Ince bleeding from a head wound that appeared inconsistent with internal medical problems. Most damaging was the testimony of a yacht steward who swore he saw Hearst holding a smoking gun while standing over Ince's body. Little did Hollywood know that Hearst suspected an affair between Ince and his mistress Marion Davies, creating a motive for the violent confrontation that allegedly occurred in the yacht's main salon. Private investigators hired by Ince's family discovered that several party guests had been paid substantial sums to change their stories about the evening's events. Luella Parsons, who had been a relatively minor columnist before the yacht party, suddenly received a lifetime contract with Hearst newspapers and became Hollywood's most powerful gossip writer, compensation that many believed was payment for her silence. The cover-up extended to the highest levels of California politics. Governor Friend Richardson, who had received significant campaign contributions from Hearst, personally intervened to halt the criminal investigation. District Attorney Kempley, who had been enthusiastically pursuing the case, abruptly announced that no evidence of foul play existed and that the matter was closed. Kempley's bank records, discovered years later, showed a deposit of $25,000 made the day after he dropped the investigation. Records later proved that Ince's body was cremated within hours of his death, eliminating the possibility of further forensic examination. The cremation was arranged by Hearst's personal attorney, despite the family's wishes for a traditional burial. Dr. T.Z. Wilson, who signed the death certificate without examining the body, later admitted under oath that he had been told what to write by influential parties, but refused to identify them. Wilson died in a suspicious car accident just 3 days before he was scheduled to testify before a grand jury investigating Hollywood corruption. Maria Pvost. Marie Pvost's tragic death in 1937 was officially attributed to malnutrition and alcoholism, but evidence suggests the former Mack Sennett comedian and silent film star was the victim of a systematic campaign of professional and personal destruction that left her defenseless against forces that wanted her silenced forever. The Canadian-born actress was found dead in her Hollywood apartment by concerned neighbors who hadn't seen her for days. Police reports described a scene of desperate poverty, empty cupboards, unpaid bills, and a woman who had apparently starved to death despite living in the entertainment capital of the world. The official narrative painted Pvost as a has-been actress who couldn't adapt to talking pictures and died from the combined effects of alcoholism and poor nutrition. The disturbing reality emerged through private correspondence discovered in studio archives decades later. Pvost had been systematically blacklisted from film roles after threatening to expose sexual exploitation and financial fraud involving several major studio executives. Letters to her sister reveal that Pvost possessed detailed records of illegal accounting practices that had cheated actors out of millions in owed payments. She had been preparing to testify before federal investigators when her career mysteriously ground to a halt. Witness statements from Pvost's apartment building paint a picture of deliberate isolation rather than personal decline. Neighbors reported seeing well-dressed men visiting her apartment at unusual hours, often leaving her visibly distressed. Building Superintendent James Corrigan noted in his daily logs that Provost's mail delivery was frequently interrupted, her telephone service was cut multiple times for unexplained reasons, and deliveries of food and medical supplies were often intercepted by unknown individuals claiming to act on her behalf. Little did Hollywood know that Pvost had been under surveillance by private detectives employed by a consortium of studio heads who feared her potential testimony could trigger broader federal investigations into Hollywood's business practices. FBI files released in 1994 reveal that agents were aware of the surveillance operation, but were instructed not to intervene due to national security concerns that were never adequately explained. Records later proved that Pvost's bank accounts were systematically drained through fraudulent transactions in the months before her death. Financial investigators discovered that her signature had been forged on documents transferring her remaining assets to shell companies controlled by the same studio executives she had threatened to expose. The forgery was so sophisticated that it required expert analysis to detect, suggesting professional criminals rather than desperate financial schemes. Medical examiner notes, discovered during a 1985 cold case review, indicated that Pvost's body showed signs of systematic poisoning consistent with deliberate administration of drugs that would mimic the effects of chronic alcoholism and malnutrition. William Desmond Taylor. The murder of William Desmond Taylor in 1922 remains Hollywood's most enduring unsolved case, involving drug dealers, blackmail schemes, romantic triangles, and a web of corruption so extensive that powerful figures spent decades ensuring the truth would never emerge from the shadows of Paramount Pictures' most guarded secret. Taylor's body was discovered in his Alvarado Street home on February 2, 1922, by his valet Henry Pvost, who initially believed the director had suffered a heart attack. It wasn't until the coroner arrived that investigators realized Taylor had been shot in the back with a .38 caliber revolver. The crime scene had been contaminated by studio executives and Paramount personnel who arrived before police, removing documents and personal items that might have provided crucial evidence. The investigation immediately focused on Taylor's complex personal relationships. Actress Mabel Normand had been the last person known to see him alive, visiting his home the evening before to discuss her cocaine addiction, which Taylor had been trying to help her overcome. Mary Miles Minter, the teenage actress who was obsessed with Taylor, became another prime suspect, especially after investigators discovered passionate love letters she had written to the much older director. Most suspicious was Minter's mother, Charlotte Shelby, who had threatened Taylor's life after discovering the inappropriate relationship. Little did Hollywood know that Taylor's murder was connected to his efforts to expose a drug trafficking network that extended from Hollywood to Mexico, involving several prominent studio executives and organized crime figures. Private detective files revealed Taylor had been gathering evidence of cocaine distribution operations that used movie sets as cover for smuggling activities. His personal safe, emptied before police arrived, allegedly contained photographs and financial records documenting the involvement of major Hollywood figures in narcotics trafficking. The cover-up began immediately and extended to the highest levels of law enforcement. Los Angeles District Attorney Thomas Woolwine, who had promised to solve the case within weeks, suddenly announced that lack of evidence made prosecution impossible. Woolwine's personal financial records, discovered during a corruption investigation in the 1940s, showed mysterious payments from accounts linked to studio executives. Similarly, the lead detective on the case, Sergeant Eddie King, retired early with an unexplained fortune and refused to discuss the Taylor investigation for the remainder of his life. Records later proved that multiple witnesses to crucial events were intimidated into silence or relocated out of state before they could provide testimony. Faith McLean, Taylor's neighbor, who claimed to have seen a suspicious figure leaving his house on the night of the murder, changed her story 3 times before disappearing entirely from Los Angeles. The most credible suspect, Edward Sands, Taylor's former valet who had been stealing from him and forging checks, was never seriously pursued by investigators, despite clear evidence of his criminal activities and access to Taylor's home. Sands vanished completely after the murder, and some researchers believe he was eliminated to prevent him from revealing information about the drug trafficking network that ultimately led to Taylor's death. Olive Thomas. Olive Thomas's death in a Paris hotel room in 1920 was officially ruled a tragic accident involving mercury bichloride poisoning, but evidence suggests the Ziegfeld Follies star and silent film actress was murdered in a sophisticated plot involving international drug trafficking, military intelligence, and a cover-up that reached the highest levels of both American and French governments. The 25-year-old actress was in Paris with her husband, Jack Pickford, brother of Mary Pickford, ostensibly for a second honeymoon following rumors of marital troubles. On September 10, 1920, Thomas was found unconscious in their hotel bathroom at the Ritz, having apparently consumed a fatal dose of mercury bichloride, a topical antiseptic that was extremely toxic if ingested. She died 4 days later in agony, with French authorities quickly ruling the death an accidental poisoning. The official story claimed Thomas had mistakenly drunk the poison in the dark, thinking it was water or medication for a syphilis treatment. However, witness testimony and physical evidence suggested a far more complex scenario. Hotel staff reported hearing violent arguments from the Pickford suite throughout the evening, with multiple voices suggesting the presence of unknown visitors. Most disturbing was the discovery that the mercury bichloride bottle had been deliberately placed in a location where Thomas would not normally keep medication. French police files, declassified in 1995, reveal that Thomas had been under surveillance by both American military intelligence and French security services for her alleged involvement in cocaine trafficking operations between New York and Paris. Military investigators suspected that entertainment figures were being used as couriers to smuggle narcotics into France, exploiting their celebrity status to avoid customs inspections. Thomas's frequent trips to Paris and her associations with known drug dealers had made her a person of interest in an international investigation. Little did Hollywood know that Thomas possessed detailed knowledge of a drug distribution network that supplied cocaine to wealthy Americans living in post-war Paris. Private correspondence discovered in French archives shows she had been threatened by criminal organizations demanding her silence about their operations. More significantly, military intelligence documents reveal that Thomas had agreed to cooperate with American authorities in exposing the trafficking network in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Records later proved that Jack Pickford's alibi for the evening of his wife's death was fabricated with the help of American embassy officials, who were later revealed to have financial connections to the criminal organizations under investigation. Pickford claimed to have been gambling at a private club, but club records showed no evidence of his presence that evening. Most damning was the testimony of a hotel elevator operator who swore he had seen Pickford leaving the hotel during the time frame when Thomas allegedly consumed the poison, directly contradicting his story of being present when she accidentally ingested the fatal dose. The elevator operator died in an unrelated accident just days before he was scheduled to provide formal testimony to French investigators, eliminating a crucial witness whose testimony could have proven that Thomas was murdered rather than accidentally poisoned. Albert Decker. Albert Decker's death in 1968 was officially ruled a suicide by autoerotic asphyxiation, but the grotesque circumstances surrounding the character actor's final moments suggest a ritualistic murder designed to humiliate and silence a man who had become increasingly vocal about corruption and criminal activities within the entertainment industry. The 62-year-old actor, known for his villainous roles in films like Dr. Cyclops and The Killers, was discovered dead in his Hollywood Hills home by his fiancée, bound with elaborate restraints, covered in obscene writings, and suspended in a manner that investigators claimed indicated sexual self-gratification gone wrong. The scene was so bizarre that even experienced homicide detectives expressed doubt about the suicide ruling, though their concerns were quickly dismissed by superiors. Witness statements paint a picture of an actor under extreme pressure from unknown sources in the months before his death. Decker had been conducting a personal investigation into financial irregularities involving several talent agencies and production companies, claiming that organized crime figures were using entertainment businesses to launder money. His personal secretary reported that he had been receiving threatening phone calls and mysterious packages, while his behavior became increasingly paranoid and erratic as he gathered evidence of criminal activities. The physical evidence at the crime scene contradicted the official suicide explanation in multiple ways. Forensic experts noted that the elaborate bondage arrangements would have been physically impossible for Decker to create himself, while the writings on his body were applied with multiple different writing instruments, suggesting the involvement of several individuals. Most significantly, traces of drugs that could cause unconsciousness were found in his system, though these findings were minimized in official reports. Little did Hollywood know that Decker had been preparing to testify before federal investigators about his discoveries regarding money laundering operations when he died. FBI files released decades later reveal that agents had scheduled a formal interview with Decker for the week following his death, hoping to use his evidence as the foundation for a broader investigation into organized crime infiltration of the entertainment industry. The timing of his death effectively ended the investigation before it could begin. Records later proved that several individuals with connections to both organized crime and the entertainment industry were known to be in Los Angeles during the time of Decker's death, though none were questioned by police. Private investigator reports commissioned by Decker's family identified at least 3 men with histories of violence who had been asking about Decker's activities in the days before his death. Most disturbing was the discovery that the crime scene had been cleaned and rearranged before police arrived, with crucial evidence potentially removed by unknown individuals who had access to Decker's home. The investigation was closed with unusual speed, and the lead detective on the case was transferred to another division immediately afterward, fueling suspicions that powerful figures had orchestrated a cover-up to prevent Decker's evidence from ever reaching federal investigators. 7 decades later, these cases remain as mysterious and unsolved as the day they shocked Hollywood. From Thelma Todd's frozen corpse to Albert Decker's ritualistic death scene, the official explanations crumble under scrutiny, revealing a pattern of cover-ups, corruption, and killers who walked free. Were these the desperate acts of individuals, or something more organized, a systematic silencing of those who knew too much about Hollywood's darkest secrets? Subscribe to explore more hidden truths about Tinseltown's most guarded mysteries, and tell us in the comments, which case do you think holds the key to understanding how deep the conspiracy really went?